What's up, guys? Carr here, and what I'm bringing you guys is a full beginner SQL course. I hope you guys really enjoyed this course. I broke it down into 4 different chapters. Feel free to give me some great feedback. Let me know how I did, and good luck on your SQL journey. How's it going, guys? It's Carl. We're getting ready to learn some SQL, so let's go ahead and get started. Make sure you guys are taking notes, have something to write with so that you can take notes. And feel free to go back to this training class at any time of the video, and feel free to press pause if you just need to rewind and reset yourself. Let's go ahead and get started with slide 1. So what is SQL? SQL stands for the structured query language. SQL lets you access and manipulate databases. SQL became a standard of the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, in 1986, and of the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, in 1987. It was that good. Next slide. What can SQL do? So SQL can execute queries against a database. SQL can retrieve data from a database. SQL can insert records in a database. SQL can also update records in a database. SQL can delete records from a database. SQL can create new databases. It can create new tables in a database. It can create stored procedures in a database. It can create views in a database. And it can set permissions on tables, procedures, and views. That is what SQL can do. Next, we have SQL database table. A database most often contains one or more tables. Each table is identified by a name. In this particular table, we have customers, or you can have something like orders. Tables contain records, rows with data. In this training, we will be building our own database from scratch using SSMS, which is short for SQL Server Management Studio. Below is a selection from the customers table, and this is just an example of how we will be building our database out in SQL Server Management Studio. The table above contains 3 records, 1 for each customer, and 7 columns. You have the customer ID, customer name, contact name, address, city, postal code, and country. SQL statements. Most of the actions you need to perform on a database are done with SQL statements. The following SQL statement selects all the records in this customer table. If you just do a simple select star or asterisk and from customers, which is the database. In this chapter, you will learn all about the different SQL statements. SQL keywords are not case sensitive. Select is the same as select, all uppercase. But keep in mind that we will be writing all our SQL keywords in uppercase just for best business practice. Last but not least, certainly not least, some of the most important SQL commands are the select command, update, delete, insert into, create database, alter database, create table, alter table, drop table, create index, and drop index. Each one of these select statements has a definition. The definitions are as follows. Select extracts data from a database. Update updates data in a database. Delete, of course, deletes data from a database. Insert into allows you to insert new data into a database. Create databases, which we're going to start with, allows you to create a new database. Alter database gives you the opportunity to modify a database. Create table creates a new table within a database. Alter table modifies the table. Drop table deletes a table. Create index creates an index with a search key, and then drop index deletes an index. With so much more to come, this concludes the introduction to learning SQL. Hey guys, welcome back. Let's get started with learning more SQL. What we're going to be doing in this particular exercise is we're going to be creating a database. We're also going to be inserting a table into that database. We're going to be doing our first select statement. So let's go ahead and get started. Open up your SQL, your SSMS, and let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you're going to do is just going to hit new query. Once you hit new query, what I want you to do is I want you to come over here to databases, and I want you to expand your databases. And as you can see here, I have a few databases that I already have created, and databases that I utilize for Microsoft, which is AdventureWorks, which is one of the recommended ones to use and look at and explore. But today we're going to be creating our own database. So in order to do that, all you have to do is simply type in these SQL commands. Just follow along. Create database. And our database name for this training is going to be, I'm going to give it my name and then put global at the end of it, like so. So that is going to be the name of this database. Once you do that, all I want you to do next is hit execute. Then once you hit execute, you should see commands completed successfully. Once it has completed successfully, what I want you to do is go. You should see that database that you just created. And the one that I created was Huff Global. And it shouldn't have any tables in it just yet. We have completed number 1. The next thing we're going to be doing is inserting a table into that database. Once you have your database created, what you want to do now is come up here to master and change it to your new database. Because now you want to start inserting a table into your new database. So now we're going to go here and we're going to say create. Remember, we're going to use all caps. Create table. And this is going to be the customer table. So for my customer table, what I want to do is I want to have an ID. And the ID is going to be an integer. Next, I want to have last name. The last name will be a character, so we're going to choose varchar. Next, I want to have the first name. And this is also a character, so we're going to choose varchar for the first name. Next, we want to have ID, last name, first name. Let's go with the gender. And this is a character. So this will also be, we'll just put that one at 50. Then we'll have a address. Let's give it an address. Next, we're going to do a varchar for address. And we'll put this at 255 as well. So with our address, we're going to need a city. This will also be a varchar. So note that with each one that we add, we're actually adding these as columns. And we're going to need a state, which is also going to be a varchar. And last but not least, we're going to have a zip code. And that'll be an integer since it's just a number. And then we'll close that with a closed parentheses. And then we can put our semicolon at the end of it. And since we have this created, we can go ahead and get rid of that. And now we can hit execute. It says completed successfully, so we'll hit refresh here. Then we'll drop down to our tables, and now we'll see that we have inserted our first table into our query. So we're done with number 2, so we can just basically get rid of this. So we've went ahead and created our table. Now we have a customer table. So now we're going to move on to number 3. Even though we don't have any data in our table just yet, we're going to run a query on the table that we created just to make sure that we can do that. So we're just going to say select all. We're going to say from, and then we're going to say Huff, not analytics. Huff global dot DBO, and then we're going to do customer. And then we're going to run that query, and we'll see that we get this back because we don't have any data. There is no data to show. And I'll just bring this up a little bit. Query executed successfully, and now you have created your first database as well as create your first table. Welcome back, Carl here. Now we're going to be inserting data into our table that we created. We're also going to query that data to make sure that data is entered correctly and last but not least, we're going to be creating a new table. So let's go ahead and get started with inserting our data into table. And it's just going to be 10 rows of data. So we're not going to do a whole lot, but we're going to do enough to build that repetition to start getting your memory remembering what to enter to insert data into a table. So let's just go ahead and get started with insert into is the statement, the SQL statement that we're going to be using, and what we're going to be inserting into is this customer table right here. So we're going to type in customer here, and then let's just hit enter. Once we hit enter, we're going to be building the columns around this inside this parentheses. So let's just go ahead and use this here. So before we started, you should have just did a select all so that you can see the columns here and use that kind of as a cheat sheet. So I'm just going to come here and say ID, last name, and as you can see, it's populating for you. First name, and you can just hit enter like that, and then just keep doing this all the way across. Address, city, state, and zip code. Once you've done that, the next thing we're going to do is the values, right? So let's just come at the end of this line here and say values. And let's just remember to all caps it, values. Once you get to this line, we're going to do another open and close parentheses, and we're going to be inserting the values within the parentheses, and the values is just going to be consistent or parallel with the column names or in that same order. So for the first value, we're going to have ID, which is 1, and then we're going to have a last name. So your last name is going to be inside these single quotes. And then let's just pick a last name. Let's just say it's Jackie for her. And then we're going to say another single quotes. I'm going to pick that. And then we're going to do single quotes for the gender. And we're just going to say female. We're going to spell it out because we're going to do some things later on to go from the word female to just the letter female. So we're going to spell it out just for now. And then we're going to do the address and just type it exactly how I'm typing it. 8 Dakota Plaza. Spelled Dakota wrong. There we go. Next we have the state. No, the address and then the city. So this city will be Herndon. And then we'll have the state. This state will be Virginia. And last but not least, we'll have the zip code. And that's the zip code. Once we finish that, we can go ahead and put a semicolon at the end of that. And that will be our first row within our table. So our first row will consist of 1 for the ID, last name Jackie, Moyes, female, address, city, state, and the zip code. If I go ahead and hit this execute now, we'll see that 1 row has been affected. And if I come down here and then I just do a select, all, from customer. So if I do that and hit execute, we'll see that we've entered in our first row in our table. Once you've done that, go ahead and take some time and do the rest of these. I'm just going to go ahead and post it here. Pause the video. Do the rest of these on your own. Once you're done, just go ahead and press play. And we'll just pick up at number 10. So if you've done number 10 already, let's just go ahead and run a query to make sure that that data is indeed inside that data in that data table. So we're going to do a select all. We're going to do from, and we're going to do customer. And we're going to do, make sure we spell it right too. All right, so once we do that, we can just do execute. Oh, and I got to pull this up. Once you do execute, you should see all the data that you entered up here inside of that table, with Moaz being the first one and Phil being the last one, and it should be a total count of 10. And you should have all your states and cities and everything filled out. Now, the last thing I want to show you guys is, imagine if you had one too many letters on the end of somebody's name. So let's take for an example, Jose. We see here we have Jose, instead of Jose we have Jose. So in order to fix this, what I want to do is I want to come here. First I want to come here and let's just fix it. Right, we're going to fix it, but we're not going to do anything just yet. But just keep in mind that this ID number is number 4, just like up here, just like down here, this ID number 4. So what I want to do to fix that is I want to do a delete, and a delete from statement we're going to delete from, we're deleting from customer, and then we're going to do where, and we'll get into where clauses, where ID is equal to 4. So we're going to delete where ID is equal to 4. So we're just going to come here and do an execute. So we'll do an execute, and then let's just select all again as to see what we have. So we have everything except for that number 4. So you see that Jose is gone. So what we're going to do to add that back, since we already made the modifications and changes to it, we're going to come here and we're just going to say, we're going to run this. We have Jose spelled right now. Execute. And once we do that, we hit boom. And then just realize Jose had too many E's, but now it has one E, and it is actually Jose. And we have just made some modifications to our table without breaking our table. Last but not least, let's create a table. Now let's go ahead and create a table. We're going to do create table, and this table is going to be the sales table. Yes, we're finally there. We're at sales table. So we're going to do sales, and then we're going to open and close that because we're going to build this table out within those parentheses. And remember, to build a table is all about having your column and then explaining what that column type is going to be. So let's go ahead and get started first with our ID table, because we want to make sure that we have a column that is relational to the other table. So we're going to do an ID first. So we're going to say ID, and that is going to be an integer. The next thing we're going to do is let's just do a card type, and that's going to be a varchar, and let's just say 50. The next thing we're going to do is a store. Let's just call this a varchar. Let's just say store category. And this will also be a varchar. The next thing we're going to have is we're going to have an amount. And then this is going to be an integer. Card type, store category, amount. And we're just going to stop at amount for this particular table. So I'll just do my semicolon at the end. So now we have a sales table that's going to include the ID, a card type, a store category, and an amount. So let's go ahead and create this table. So let's execute. Commands completed successfully. If we come here and do a refresh, we'll just come to your tables and do the refresh. So come here and do the refresh, and now you can see that we have a sales table. If I come here and do a select all from, instead of customer, we can say sales. Hit to execute, and we can see that we have a table for sales. Now that we have a table for sales, we have concluded this session. So you guys have learned how to insert data into a table. We have queried that data, and we have also created a new table. So now I'll see you guys in the next one. Welcome back, it's Carl here. And today in SQL, we're going to be inserting data into the sales table. We're going to confirm that data was entered. So before we go ahead and get started, first things first, let's go ahead and put this on Huff Global. And then I'm going to do a select all. And we're going to be doing this from sales. And a F5 is a shortcut for a sales table. So now we know we're looking at our sales table, and the columns that we have is ID, car type, store category, and amount. So we can just go ahead here, just back this up. Let's just start with insert into. And we're inserting into sales. And then the next, we're going to do our values. And since it's an integer, you don't need the single quotes. The next one is going to be the car type, and this is a varchar. If you remember from the last exercise, this is the varchar. So we're going to do the single quotes, and then we're going to call this the visa. The next one is going to be the store category, which is an actual varchar as well. And then we're going to just say this is electronics. And then the next one is amount. So this is another integer. So we're just going to put in a random amount. So we're going to put in 1500. After 1500, we're going to put a semicolon, and that's going to enter in our first row. So then we can come here again and do another insert into sales, values, and this is going to be row 2, and we're just going to say this is a master. And we'll call this one a grocery store. And the value here. So now we have entered in our 10 rows. So let me just scroll down a little bit. So now we have entered in the data that we want to insert into our sales table. And we have exactly 10 rows. What we've basically done was cycle through 3 different cards. So the Visa, the MasterCard, Discover card, Visa, Master, Discover, Visa, Master, Discover, then Visa. Then we cycle through a few different store categories, which is electronics, grocery store, retail, dealership, miscellaneous, and online. And then we just chose some different amounts so we can play around with some numbers. And now we're just going to come up here and do a execute. So we have all of these different rows affected. Once we do that, now we want to run a query on the sales table. So we're just going to say select all from sales. We're going to hit F5 here. And now we see we've inserted data into that sales table. And we have the sales table like so. Now at this point we have created a sales tables and a customer table. So if we do a select all on our customer table from customer, we'll see that in our customer table we also have 10 rows. So we have 2 different tables with consistent rows, and at this point we are good to go. Welcome back, guys. It's Carl Huff here. Welcome to chapter 2. Chapter 2 in the SQL learning is all about where clauses. What is a where clause, you ask? Where clauses is something that's very useful in the SQL language. It's useful when you're trying to look up data, or if you're trying to fold data. If you're receiving too much data that is bogging down your system, you just want to shrink that data down, and you want to do something like a where clause, like to set a date range from a particular date to a system date or something like that. You utilize that where clause. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is a where clause? The where clause is used to filter records, as I just stated. It's also used to extract only those records that fulfill a specific condition. The where clause is not only used in the select statements, it's also used in update, delete, and etc. The syntax for the where clause is select, from, and where, and that where is determined upon that condition. Next, we want to get into some of the operators in the where clause. So in the where clause, we have several different operators. We have the equal, we have the greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, not equal. And please take note that in some version of SQL, this operator may be written as exclamation point and equals. Then we have between which is between a certain range, like, which allows you to search for a pattern. And then last but not least, we have in, and it's to specify multiple possible values for a column. With that being said, let's go ahead and learn how to utilize the where clause in our SQL. Welcome back, Carl here. Today in SQL, we're going to be using the where clause. The where clause can be used in SQL to filter different columns. Simply put, the where clause is used to filter different records in SQL. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to select all, and we're just going to select all from customer. We'll just go ahead and do this one. I'm going to hit an F5. So we have all the items from customer. So we just pulled up the customer table, and this is the one that we're going to start utilizing. So now let's filter a record in our customer table. So first thing we want to do is I want to say select all from customer. Then we're going to say where the ID is equal to 1, and that equal to is a where clause operator, and we'll get into that later. So if we go ahead and do this, we'll just grab this, hit F5, and we've just filtered the ID column to only look for number 1. And now you know how to use where clause in SQL. Welcome back, Carl here. And today in SQL, we're going to be using where clause operators. We're going to be focusing on greater than and less than. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to come here and we're just going to do a select. We're going to do a select all from our customer table. I'm going to hit F5. Now looking at this customer table, I just want to point out to you guys that when we're using a greater than and less than, it has to be an amount or some type of number. So we could use the zip code, but that really doesn't make sense to what we're trying to do here. So what we want to do is, instead of using this customer table, we're going to go to sales table. Then we're going to hit an F5. So in our sales table, now we can see that we have an amount. So now that greater than and less than operator is something that we can really utilize and take advantage of. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll leave that there. And then we're just going to do a select all from sales. And then we're going to say where, when we're going to be looking at amount. So we're going to say where amount, and then let's just say greater than, let's just say 3,000. And then we're going to come here, select that, and do an F5. So as we can see, we said that we wanted to select everything from the sales table where the amount was greater than 3,000. As we can see here, we have everything that came back greater than 3,000, but we don't have 3,000, and we'll get into that one a little later. But if we wanted to include that 3,000, what we could say is 2,999, and if we go ahead and do that, we'll see that we'll get that 3,000. Now if we look at the rest of our tables, we'll see that the ones that didn't show up were the ones that were basically less than 3,000. or less than 2,999. With that being said, let's look at less than. So we're going to do another select all. We're going to be looking at sales, and then we're going to say where it's less than, let's just say 3,000 this time. So if we go ahead and say less than 3,000 and we got an incorrect syntax error here because what I forgot was the amount. So make sure that you say, whenever you use your where clause, you want to say what column we're looking in. So we got to have amount there. So I'll hit that. And now we see everything that's less than 3,000. And remember, if you're wondering why 3,000 didn't pop up, because we're looking at everything less than 3,000. Now, if we wanted 3,000 to pop up or populate, we'll say 3,001, and then we'll come here, hit F5, and then we'll see everything less than 3,001, and that will include 3,000. Now you know how to use the where clause in the greater than and less than operators. Hey guys, welcome back. It's Carl here. Today in SQL, we're going to be doing where clause operators greater than or equal to and less than or equal to. Let's go ahead and get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to do a select all. And we're going to do from sales. Let's just do an F5. So in our sales table, we have 10 different values that we're able to work with. So let's just go ahead and get it started with those. So the first thing I want to do is I want to do a greater than or equal to. So we're going to do select all from sales where the amount is greater than or equal to, let's just say 1,200. Then we're gonna select that one. Let's just get rid of this. F5. And once we do that, we see that we have 9 different results that came back. However, we have one result that's missing. And if we go ahead and if we look at everything all together, we'll see that the one that's missing is actually the grocery store, which was set to 500. So I'll just pull this up here so we can see. So we have greater than or equal to 1,200. So everything that came back is greater than 1,200 and also equal to 1,200. So we get that 1,200 and everything that's greater than that. Now, if we wanted to look at something like 4,000, let's just say 4,000. We'll say greater than or equal to 4,000, and then I'll just hit an F5 on that. So we'll get everything that's greater than or equal to 4,000. So 4,000 and everything above that. So that is our greater than or equal to where clause operator. Let's back this up, and now let's do our less than or equal to. So we're gonna just do another select statement. So we're gonna select all from sales where we're going to use the amount again. The amount is less than or equal to, let's just say 2,500. So we're just going to hit F5 on that so we can see our results. So as we have our first result, which is basically select all from sales. So we did a where clause where it's less than or equal to 2,500. So we have everything that's less than 2,500, and we also have 2,500, which is equal to. So we have everything less than or equal to 2,500. Now, if I wanted to go with 500, we'll have everything less than or equal to 500. So I'll just hit F5 here, and now we see that we have everything that's less than or equal to 500, which we have really nothing. 500 was our lowest number, so we have nothing less than 500. But it's also equal to 500, so we have 500. And now you know how to use the where clause operator less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Hey, welcome back. It's Carl here. Today in SQL, we're going to be looking at the where clause operator not equal to. Where clause operator not equal to is simply identified by using the greater than and less than symbol, and it is as follows. So let's go ahead and get into it. The not equal to is basically when you use this operator to filter out something in the table where you just do not want it to show. So let's go ahead and use this for an example. We're just gonna select the table. So we're just gonna say select all from, I'm going to do customer table. By executing this customer table, we see that this customer table has 10 rows in it. And just say for an example, we wanted to get rid of all the males in this table. This is a situation where we can utilize the not equal operator. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like by just going to select. I'm going to say all from customer, where, let's go with gender, because we've got to make sure that we're looking at the gender column. And then we're going to put in not equal. This represents not equal. And then we're just going to put our single quotes in and say male. After we do that, we can hit this. Let's just hit F5. And actually, let's just hit F5 on this one. So once we do F5, and we looking in our table, we see that the query executed successfully and it brought us back everything that was not male. So we're seeing all the female rows, and this works for every column. So as this one says gen, let's just come here and replace male with gen. And if we say gen, we see gen is on row 2, ID 2. And if we come here and execute this by hitting F5, and we have to remember to make sure we're picking last name, because we have to make sure that column is selected as well. We come here, hit F5, and now we see that ID number 2 is gone. So let's try another one. So the one that we want to try now is, let's just back all the way back. We're going to try to go for the state. So we're going to get rid of Texas. Texas is ID number 4. So let's just say where state is not equal, and we're going to do single quotes, Texas. And then we'll come here, hit F5, and we'll see that the Texas is now gone, which was ID number 4. So now you know how to utilize the not equal to operator in SQL. Hello guys, welcome back. It's Carl here. Today in SQL, we're going to be showing you how to use the where clause operator between. The between where clause filters between a certain range. So let's go ahead and set this up. So let's just say select all from, and now we're going to be using sales. Let's hit F5. So we have the sales table. So when we use this where clause operator between, what we're doing is basically saying, give me a number range. It's basically like saying, give me the amount of 500 and 3,000. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you everything between that number range. But it don't have to be a number that's on that amount page. It could be any number. So it can be, give me a number between 400 and 1,300. And this will still get you the information back that you're looking for. So let's go ahead and set this up. So we're just going to get rid of this. And we're just going to say select all from sales. And remember, it's not based on syntax, so we don't have to capitalize the S in sales every time. And then we're going to say where the amount, and then between, and we'll just use that last example, 400. Then we're going to use the and, we're going to use the and statement, and then say 1,300. And then we can go ahead and do an F5 on that. So now we see that by selecting between 400 and 1,300, we're only getting the records back that's in between those two numbers. So the numbers that's in between those two numbers is 500 and 1,200. So let's try another example. So let's just do another select from sales where amount between, let's just say 1,400 and 3200. And then let's select this, hit F5. So by saying give me the sales amount between 1400 and 3200, we're going to get back everything within between those two values. So we get back 1500, 2500, 3000, as well as 2000. And that is how you utilize the between operator in SQL. Hey, welcome back. It's Carl here. Today in SQL, we're going to be looking at how to use the like operator in our where clause. So the like operator allows you to search for a pattern. There are three different ways we can utilize this. We can search for a first letter, we can search for the last letter, or we can look for a word that contains the letter. Let's go ahead and work this out in SQL. First thing we want to do is I want to just select all, and we're going to be using the customer table. So at this point, you should be pretty versed into going ahead and get everything set up. So like I said, we have situations where we have J as the first letter, V as the first letter, D as the first letter. Then we have situations where E is the last letter, D is the last letter, or A is the last letter. So on and so forth for each one of these fields. They all have letters, so we can pick either one of these. The one I'm going to choose is the first name. So let's go ahead and set this up in the first one. So I'll just create some space for myself and just do a select statement here. Then do a select all. We're going to do from customer. And then we're going to say where the first name, like, want to use our single quotes. And then what we want to do for the first name is first we want to type in the letter that we're looking for. So in the first name we have M, F, S, P, and the one that we're going to use is S. And then after S we want to say %. Using the %, it's basically saying I'm just looking for the S, that first letter, and whatever follows after that really doesn't matter. It's just as long as it has S as the first letter. So we're going to just go ahead and put our semicolon here, and let's come here and just do a F5. And what happened is it looked for any first name that started with that letter S. So now we get a return of all the first names with the letter S: Santon and Snook. All right, so let's just go ahead and bring everything back. We'll hit F5 on that. And now we can go to our next one. So let's just create some space and let's say select all from customer where first name like, and we're going to do single quotes again, but this time we're going to put the % first because we're looking for that last letter. So the letter that we're going to pick is going to be N. Once we put that, we put our semicolon there. Let's just grab this, hit F5. So now we get a return of everything from the first name column ending with the letter N. And that is how that looks, and that is how that works. Last but not least, let's look for something that just contains the letter. So before we do that, let's just bring everything back. And we're going to go here to contains. And then we're going to say select from customer. And we're going to do where first name like, and then we're going to use single quotes, but this time we're going to use 2%, and then we're going to put the letter, the desired letter that we want, in the middle. So the letter to me that stands out the most, that pretty much fall anywhere, is we're going to pick on, let's just try A. So we're just going to try A, put some semicolons at the end. We're looking for the first name that contains A. So let's go ahead and hit F5. So then we get a return of the first names that contain the letter A. So A is the second letter here, A is the third to the last letter here, A is the second letter here, and the second letter there. So that is how that works. It doesn't matter whether that letter is first, last, or in between all the other letters, and I'll show you guys a quick example. We'll just change this to M. So we'll run this. And now that it's changed to M, now we get a return of all the first name that contains the letter M. And now you know how to utilize the like operator in SQL. Hey, welcome back. It's Carl here. Today in SQL, we're going to be going over how to use the AND operator in the where clause. The AND operator is used to specify multiple possible values for a column. Let's go ahead and break this down. So first thing we want to do is pick a table. So we're going to go with the customer table. So let's select all from customer. So we have the customer table selected, and the way this is going to work is we're just going to utilize the state column. So the state column, I'm just going to pick a few states, and we're going to use the end clause in order to do that, or the end statement in order to do that with the where clause. So let's go ahead and set the scene. So we're going to say select all from customer where state in, and then we have to use parentheses, and then we do single quotes to select the states that we want. So we're going to use Ohio, and then we have to do a comma, and then let's just use Texas for the other one. And then after we do that, we can do our semicolon, select, and then hit F5. So now what we've done is we use the where clause to select two different states by saying select where state is in Ohio and Texas. So let's select all and just do it one more time. So this time, instead of Ohio and Texas, let's just say Virginia, California, and just say Maryland. And we'll hit F5. So you see that only two came back, and the reason for that is if you don't spell it right, then this is what happens. So like we forgot our I on Virginia, so we're going to try it again, and then boom. So there it is. We've used the end statement in our where clause, and now we know how to use the end in SQL. Welcome back, Carl here. Today in SQL, we're going to be learning about the aggregate functions. So let's go ahead and get started. What are aggregate functions in SQL? An aggregate function performs a calculation on a set of values and returns a single value, except for count all. Aggregate functions ignore null values. Aggregate functions are often used with the group by clause of the select statement. Count is defined as basically counts how many rows are in a particular column. The sum adds together all the values in a particular column. The minimum and max return the lowest and the highest values in a particular column, respectively. And the average calculates the average of a group of selected values. Last but not least, what is a group by statement? The group by statement groups rows that have the same values as the summary of rows, like find the number of customers in each country. The group by statement is often used with aggregate functions count, max, min, sum, and average to group the results set by one or more columns. Good luck with chapter 3. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be using the count function. The count function returns the number of rows that matches a certain criteria. So let's go ahead and get started. We're just going to do select all, and we're going to be looking from cells. Let's just hit an F5 there. So in this sales column, or in this sales table, we see that we have 10 rows. So when we do this count function, it's going to return the number of row that matches a specific criteria. So let's go ahead and test this out. So we'll come here, say select count, and then we're going to put in ID from sales. We'll come here, I'm going to hit F5. So what happens is we get a row count of 10. So it gives us one row, but it lets us know that in that row there are 10 rows that matches the specified criteria. That is how you utilize count. Another thing we can do is, you see here where it says no column name, we can come here and say as, and we can just call that count. We'll come here, F5, and now we have changed that column name to count. And now you know how to use the count statement in SQL. Hey guys, welcome back. Today in SQL we're going to be working on the average function. The average function returns the average value of a numeric column. So let's go ahead and use the sales tables for this one. So let's go ahead and get started with select all from sales. I'm going to F5 on this, and the numeric column that we're going to use here is going to be amount. So let's go ahead and set this up. So let's just say select average. Remember, it's open and close parentheses, and we're going to say amount from sales. And then we're going to come here, F5. So we have the average as 2,820. And remember, if we want to go ahead and give this a name, we can say as average, or we just call this sales average. Sales average. And we'll come here, and we actually can't have a space, so we'll do that. Execute, and now we have sales average. And that is how you use the average statement in SQL. Hey guys, welcome back. Carl here. Today in SQL we're going to be doing the sum function. The sum function returns the total sum of a numeric column. In order to do this function, we're going to use the sales table. Let's go ahead and set this up. Let's take a look at the sales tables. We're going to say select all from sales. We'll just do an F5 here, and on the sales table we see that we have a numeric column with amount as the column header. So we're going to be using the amount. We're going to be using the amount column, and what the sum function is going to do here is basically add everything up and give us a total number. So basically 1,500 plus 500 plus 2,500 plus 5,000, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and set this up. We're going to say select sum. Remember, you open and close those parentheses, and we're going to say amount, and then we're going to say from sales, and then we're going to take this, execute. And so what it did there was it gave us the total value of that column because we used the sum function, which adds up all the values in that column. Then we can go ahead and give this a name, and we just call this as, we can just call it total. We'll come here, F5. So now we have the total value of the amount column. And that is how you use the sum function. Hey guys, Carl here, welcome back. And today in SQL we're going to be looking at the min function. The min function returns the smallest value of a selected column. So if you have a column that's full of numbers, full of numeric values, and you just want to be able to extract the smallest number in that column without trying to cipher through all of the data, all of the information in that table, then you will probably want to use the min function. So let's go ahead and set this up. We're going to say select all from, we're going to go sales again because those are our numeric values in that table. We're going to F5 it, and we see that in this table, in the amount column, we have 1500, 500, which 500 is basically the smallest amount out of this table. But just imagine if you had a table with 10,000 rows and you just was trying to find that smallest numeric value. How would you do that? Well, you will quickly do that by just doing this min function. So we're going to say select min, remember open and close parentheses, and we're going to put amount as the column, and then we're going to say we're getting that data from the sales table. We'll go there, and then we'll highlight it and hit F5. So now that we've run that query, we see that we get back 500. 500 is the smallest value within that numeric column. So, and like I like to do, since it says no column name here, let's go ahead and identify this statement or this SQL and say as min. We'll call it that. So we'll come here and run it this again. Now we have the min amount as 500. And now you guys know how to use the min function in SQL. Welcome back. Carr here. Today in SQL, we're going to be working with the max function in SQL. What the max function does in SQL is return the largest value of a selected column, opposite of what the min function does. So in the max, with using the max function, if you was looking at a table with 10,000 rows, you just wanted to figure out what was the highest value within that numeric column, then you'll use the max function. Let's go ahead and set this up. We're going to use the sales table. So we're going to say select all from sales, go F5 here. So as we look at the sales table in the amount column, we see that the highest value within this column is 5,000. 5,000 Visa dealership. So this is the value that should come back when we use the max function. So let's go ahead and set this up. Select max, remember open and close parentheses, amount from sales. So let's go ahead and F5. So we see that immediately when we run that query, we get 5,000 back as the max value, because what this function does, it returns the largest value of the selected column. And you know me, I like to go ahead and give my column a name, and we're going to call this max value. And we can just run this again so you can see that being executed. So now you see that the max value is 5,000, and now you know how to use the max function in SQL. Welcome back. It's Carr here. And today in SQL, we're going to be going over the group by statement. The group by statement is often used with aggregate functions such as count, max, min, sum, average to group the result set by one or more columns. Today, we're just going to be working on one column. So let's go ahead and set this up. First thing we're going to do is go select all from sales. We're going to be using our sales tables today. We're going to select all, F5. All right, so by doing this, the first thing we notice is we have 10 rows, we have our amounts, we have our card types, and we have store categories. Now we want to go ahead and get into the group by. Let's go ahead and start with count. All right, for count, the following SQL statement is going to list the number of IDs in each store category. So if you look down here, we have 10 IDs and we have store categories, but we don't have 10 store categories that are unique. We actually have some store categories that repeat themselves. So that is going to give us our unique value or distinct value. So let's go ahead and set this up. We're going to say select count, open and close those parentheses, and we're going to put an ID. Then we're going to go comma because we're looking at both the ID and the store category. So store category, and then we're going to say from sales and then we're going to group by, because we want to group this by store category. And then let's come here, execute it. Now that we've done that, we see that we now have a count of our ID with store category. So basically we have 1 dealership, 2 electronics, 2 grocery stores, 1 miscellaneous, 1 online, and then we have 3 retail stores. And how do we know this? So if we come back up here and do a F5 on that, we see we have 2 electronic stores, which is 2 electronic stores. We have, where's our dealership? We have 1 dealership. So you see we have 1 dealership. We have 2 grocery stores, 2 grocery stores. We have 1 miscellaneous right here. We have 1 online store, which yep, was number 10, yep. And then for retail we have 3 stores. So 1, 2, 3. So 3 retail stores. So that is how the group and count works. So let's go ahead and get into the next one, which will be max. All right, so for max, the following SQL statement lists the max of amount in the store category. So in order to do this, we're basically going to be looking at this. So in order to set this up, let's just go ahead and say select all. For this following SQL statement in max of amount in the store category, what it's going to be doing is it's going to be giving us the max value. So remember in the first one we had to count, and it counted the number of dealerships, retail stores, grocery stores, electronic stores. What this SQL statement is going to do for the group by is basically give us the max amount. So the max amount for electronics, the max amount for grocery store, the maximum amount for retail store, dealership, and so on. So let's go ahead and set this up by saying select max. I'm going to go by amount, store category, from sales. I'm going to group by store category. And I fat fingered that one. So we're going to grab this, hit F5, and now we see, and let's just do this as well. Let's go ahead and say as max amount. So our column has a name, so we'll execute that. So now we'll see our max amount for a dealership, electronic, grocery store, miscellaneous, online, and retail store. And remember, what it's doing is giving us the distinct value so that we're not getting those duplicate store categories. We're just getting the max amount from each store category. So if we go ahead and do both of these statements together, we'll start to see what the max amount looks like. So in dealership, we get our max amount at 5,000 because dealership only shows up once. In electronics, we get our max amount at 3,000 because remember, in the electronics, we have this one and we have this one, and the max is 3,000. So that's how we get 3,000 back. In grocery store, we have 1,200, and up here we have 500 here, then we have 1,200 here. So it's going to give us that max amount, and that's how that max amount group by works in SQL. Let's go ahead and get to the next one, and that is the min amount. We don't really have to rewrite anything here. Let's just simply come here to max and change it to min, and we're going to come here and change this to min, and then we're just going to change the instructions so it makes sense. All right, so the following SQL statement lists the min of amount in a store category. So let's just go ahead and set this up. So we'll just go ahead and select everything from here, and then we'll just talk through this. So same thing, but now it's just looking for that min amount. The min amount in dealership will be 5,000. Why? Because dealership only shows up one time, and the minimum amount for dealership is 5,000. And then if we go to, let's just go to our grocery store. Remember, our grocery store showed up twice, but we had one that was 500, and then we had another one that was 1,200, and the minimum was 500. So that's how that min amount works in our SQL statement. Let's go ahead and jump to the next one, sum. Let's go ahead and select all from here. Remember, no need to rewrite this. We'll just go sum here. We're gonna go sum here, and then we can just say sum. I was gonna say total, but sum is all the same. So right now, the following SQL statement is going to list the sum of amount in a store category. So basically what this means is it's going to take the sum of amount grouped by the store category and just add things up. So it's going to give us the distinct store category value, but instead of giving us the max or the min or count, it's going to give us the grand total, which is the sum. So let's go ahead and run this, and let's run it all together so we can just look at the differences. So if we come here now, we can see where electronics is 4,500 versus the max or the min. It basically just adds everything up in electronics. So we got 3,000, and then we got 1,500, and that gives us the total sum of 4,500. The same as grocery store. It takes everything from grocery store and says 500 plus 1,200, and then it gives us that sum, 1,700. So that's how the sum group by statement works in SQL. Last but not least, let's do the average. So we're going to change this to average. And then I'm going to put here average. And then we'll just do all of this together. And now we'll get the average. Then if we look at electronics, what this average statement is doing is adding a group of numbers and then dividing by the count of those numbers. So we have electronics at 22.5. We have electronics at 22.50. Then we have grocery store at 8.50, because it's basically, like I said, it's taking a group of numbers and dividing by the count of those numbers. So that is how you get your average and in your group by statement. And now you know how to use your group by statement in SQL. Hey guys, welcome back. Carl here. Today in SQL we're going to be doing the case expression. The case expression goes through conditions and return a value when the first condition is met, just like an if then else statement. So once the condition is true, it will stop reading and return the result. If no conditions are true, it returns the value in the else clause. So let's go ahead and set this up. I'm going to go select all from sales, F5. In this case statement exercise, we're going to be using all the columns, so ID, car type, store category, and amount. And the ones that I'm going to be pulling my case statement from is this store category. And what we're going to be basically doing is we're going to take everything that has store in it and categorizing that as the store. And if it doesn't have store in it, we're just going to be calling it the other. And we're going to be doing that with our case statements. So let's go ahead and set this up. So first we're going to say select, and instead of select all this time, we're going to say ID, car type, store category, and then we're going to do amount. The next thing we're going to do is our case statement. So we're just going to say case when. And then the one we're going to be using is store category. So we're going to say store category. We know we're going with the store category. Now we want to basically give it some instructions, and I want to say when it's like store. So basically anything that has store in it. So remember in previous exercises we used the like clause. So we're going to say like, and then we're going to go single quotes, put our parentheses first, and then let's do store, because if you can see, grocery store, retail store, and grocery store has store in it. So we want to find anything with the word store in it. And then we're going to say case when store category is like store. Then the next thing is we basically replacing that store category, grocery store, retail store, and we're going to replace that with store. So we're going to say then call it. Now we're giving it what to call it. So we're going to call it store. We don't want to have it all caps. We just want to call it that. And the next thing we want to do is we just want to flip the other one. So we want electronics, dealership, miscellaneous, and online to be other. So we're going to do when store category, and instead of like this time we're going to say not like, and then we're going to say store. Remember that % first, and then we're going to call this one, no all caps, other. Next thing we want to do is say else, and then just say store category, and then we want to give it a column. We want to give that column a name, so we're going to say end as, let's just call it store. Actually, we don't need single quotes for this. Store versus other. And then we want to go from sales. So let's go ahead and, oh, I spelled them out wrong. All right, that'll fix that. F5. So now if you guys pay attention to this, what we have is we have a new column that was just created using our case statement, and that new column is store versus other. And as we can see, electronics is other, and everything with store in it is actually store. So we have grocery store as store, retail store, store, and then we have the other grocery store and retail store as store, while everything else is set to other. Now you guys know how to use a case statement in SQL. Welcome back, Carl here. And today in SQL, we're going to be talking about joins. So welcome to chapter 4. Hope you guys have been doing great so far. So what are joins? A join clause is used to combine rows from 2 or more tables based on a related column between them. The purpose of the joins in SQL is to access data from multiple tables based on a logical relationship between them. Joins are used to fetch data from database tables and represent the result data set as a separate table. The advantages of a join include that it executes faster, and the retrieval time of the query using joins almost always will be faster than that of a subquery. By using joins, you can minimize the calculation burden on the database, and instead of multiple queries using one join query. Let's go ahead and get into the different types of joins. There's basically 4 different types of joins. There's the inner join, left outer join, right outer join, as well as the full outer join. Now the inner join returns records that have matching values in both sides, meaning that the ID table says 1, 2, 3 in one table, and the ID table says 1, 2, 3 in the next tables. You can possibly do an inner join there with those 2 records matching on both sides, and then get you a data set. The left outer join returns all records from the left table and the match records from the right table. The right outer join returns all records from the right table and the match records from the left table. And then the full outer join returns all records when there is a match in either the left or the right table. Now you can see some examples down here where you have the inner join. Basically you have to have 2 matching columns. In most cases it will be an ID table, but it really can vary and be several different types of columns. And the left join is basically going to return all the records from that left table and only the matched records from the right table. Then you have the right join, where it basically turns all the records from the right table and the match records from the left table. Then you have this full outer join, where it's going to return all the records when there is a match in either the left or right table. And those are the different types of joins in SQL. Welcome back, guys. Carl here, and today in SQL we're going to be using a join table. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go select. We're going to select all from. Let's go sales. We're going to go sales. So now that we have a data set, let's go ahead and get started with our joins. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be basically joining two tables, and I'm just going to go ahead and select the other table that we're going to be using for this beginner course, and we're going to be using customers as well. I'll just select it from here, and we're just going to build both of these data sets. So basically what we're going to be doing in this join is joining this table with this table. We're going to be using the ID. So let's go ahead and see what we want to do. So I want to do first name, last name, and card type. So let's go ahead and set that up by building our select statement. So I'm going to come here, say select, and now instead of all, what we're going to end up doing, we're going to come here, hit a tab, sales, and we're going to do card type. So sales.card type, comma, and then we're going to do customer first name, customer last name, hit enter. We're going to say from sales. And now let's get into our join. So the first join we're going to use is our inner join. So we're going to say inner join, and we're going to be joining customer on sales dot ID. Then we're going to say equals customer dot ID, and we'll end it here. And then let's just select everything up to here, and we're gonna hit F5. Boom. So now we have just used an inner join and used join for the first time in SQL, and now we have card type, first name, last name. We have a data set by joining two different tables. So that is how you use the join in SQL. Now if we go ahead and hit F5 on everything, now we can just bring this up and just take a look at this for a second. So if we look at this and break this down, we have the sales table here, customer table here. You know it's the sales table because you have the amounts. You know it's the customer table because you have the customers. Lastly, you look at this data set and you have both the sales and the customer table, and you know that because you have card types, which is in the sales table, and first name and last name, which is in the customer table. If we drag this back down, the beautiful thing about joining tables is now that we've joined tables, if we want to add more select statements, we can come here and do a comma, and let's just say we wanted to add the amount. So we just go to sales dot amount, and we do a F5 here, and now we've been able to add the amount without having to redo our entire select statement. We just simply added sales dot amount, and we can continue doing this and just building the rest of it out. So if we wanted to say customer dot, and then it kind of gives you a drop down of what you can select from. So let's just say customer dot state, and then we come here and do another F5. Now we see we have a card type, first name, last name, amount, and then we have the state. So that is how you utilize the joins in SQL, and this is how you utilize the inner join. And now you know how to use inner join. Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be working on left joins. The left joins return all records from the left table and the matching record from the right table. The result is 0 or null records from the right side if there is no match. So in order to do this, we're going to have to set up 2 additional rows in the sales tables. So the first thing we want to do before we get into the left join is create 2 rows into the sales tables. So in order to do that, we have to dig a little bit into one of our first exercises and do an insert into. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to say insert into sales. And remember, we're going to do open and close parentheses. And remember, if we just do this, actually we can kind of cheat a little bit by just doing a select all from sales. If we do this, F5, now we know what we're going to be adding. So let's come here and say, we're going to do ID, card type, and store category. It's giving us, and then we're going to do amount. So after that, what we want to do is our values. So we're going to say values. We're going to open and close those parentheses. So this ID, since we have 10 already, we're just going to say 11. And remember, we're using single quotes. So 11, then come here and say card type. So the extra card type we're going to use is going to be, this one is going to be, we don't have a American Express. So let's do an American Express. That way we can be able to tell. Then this one is the store category. So we're going to use store category online again. Let's just do that one. And then we're going to use amount. So the new amount in this one. And so let's go ahead and say, let's push our number up to 10,000. All right. So that is what this is going to be. So let's come here. And we're going to just say another one. Let's give us some space. And let's do a number 12. And let's just do another Visa. And let's just do another retail store. We know we love to use those Visas at those retail stores. And then let's give it a value of 800. All right. So now we're going to basically insert these 2 rows into sales. So by doing this right here, we're going to say F5 to run this. So 2 rows were affected. Now we just come here and do, so boom, now we see that those 2 rows were added, American Express and Visa. And now we can dive into left join. So let's just go ahead and delete this. Now that we inserted our 2 rows, let's go ahead and start doing a left join. And remember, in a left join, we want to be able to see all the records from the left table and the matching records from the right table. But the result is 0 or null if the record from the right side has no match. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like by using this left join. So we're going to select, and let's just say customer, and we're just going to go by the city, and we're going to say customer again, and let's just do gender here, and then let's go sales. Let's just go card type, and then let's do sales again, and let's pick amount. Then we're going to say from sales, because remember we add the 2 rows from sales. And what we're going to do with sales is we're going to do a left join on customer on sales.id equals customer.id. All right, so now that we've done that, so the result that we're going to get if we hit F5 here is now we see that we have joined 2 tables to make 1 data set. And what it reads, the left join returns all the records from the left table and the matching records from the right table. The result is 0 records from the right side if there is no match. You see here there is no match for the city and gender. There's only a match for the sales side, which is the card type and the amount, because remember we added 2 additional rows. And now you see what a left join look like, and now you can do a left join is equal. Now that we've done the left join, we can do the right join very quickly, because the left join and the right join are just interchangeable. So in order to do a right join, all we'll have to do, and to see the result of that, is, and the definition really doesn't change. So a right join, let's just get it right. So a right join returns all the records from the right table, right? And the matching records from the left table. And then the result is 0 from the left side if there is no match, right? So in order to just flip that without having to go into the whole exercise again of the right join, because it's basically saying the same thing, instead of saying left, we're saying right, is to just come here, change this from left to right, and then we will see the result of that by hitting F5. And we see that now that we've done a right join, it still works out in the definition, because we did a right join, which basically says that right joining the customer table on sales ID and customer ID. So now you see that the additional rows that we added went away, because it's only giving us those matching values from the right side, which in this case is the customer table. And the customer table only stopped at the number 10, which is 10 IDs. So now you know how to do the right join and the left join. Welcome back, guys. It's Carr here, and today we're going to be doing the full outer join. The full outer join returns all the records when there is a match in the left or the right table records. Let's go ahead and set this up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to do a select all, and we're going to go straight into the join. So we're going to go from sales, and then we're just going to say full outer join customer on sales ID and customer ID. And the reason why we're doing that is because the customer ID and the sales ID have matching values on both sides, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. However, the sales table, if in the previous exercise, we added 2 additional rows, which makes it 11, 12. So let's go ahead and come here and hit F5. And now we get an opportunity to see what the full outer join does to the data set once we run this query. So as you can see here, we have the sales data here, which has the additional 2 rows that we added, which was the American Express Online 10,000 as well as the Visa Retail Store 800. However, in the customer table, we didn't add anything, so you are getting the opportunity to see what those zeros or those null values look like. And when you do a full outer join, this is the result you get when you have 2 tables that match. However, they don't match completely on both sides. When they don't match completely on both sides, the result is you will get these zeros or you will get nulls. And now you know how to use the full outer join in SQL. Hey guys, Carr here, and today in SQL we're going to be doing joins with conditions. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to be doing a select all from sales, and then we're just going to do an inner join, if I can spell that right, inner join customers on sales.id equals customer.id. So we're going to hit F5 here. So now we get an opportunity to see what our data set will look like with this join. The conditions that you want to add can really vary based on how you want to do your data analysis on your query tables. So we can see here that we have several different things that will make sense in a business case. how many users use Visa, how many users use MasterCard or Discover, or how many people use Discover. Now, one thing about join that a lot of people may not consider is making sure that you did the join the right way. So as you can see here, I intentionally did an inner join because it was going to bring me back 10 rows. Now imagine I work for a big corporation or a company and I wanted to come in and do an assessment of their data. Now the join that I would use is really not the inner join, it'll be the full outer join. So let's see what happens when we add the full outer join. So if we add this full outer join, and let's just make it all caps. So if we go here and do an F5, now we get to see all of the data, including the null values. So now I get an opportunity to say, okay, even though it's giving me null values, now I know exactly what I have. And now we can see that we even have some American Express, and we also have an additional Visa card type. And so if we would have did any kind of data analysis on just the inner join alone, there would have been some data missed out, and we could have had some miscalculations, and we could have really been in the funk. We could have been basically $10,800 short in our data analysis. So let's go ahead and break this down by adding a condition in. So we're going to take away this, and then let's just say where, let's just say the card type like Visa. So this is going to tell us how many visas were used in our data set. So let's hit execute. So now we get the opportunity to see that, okay, Visa was used 5 times. However, there wasn't a customer ID entered for that. So now we have some money that is really unaccounted for. So now in the data audit, we can see, okay, they know that they've used the Visa card in this retail store, but they did not get an opportunity to see what that customer ID was, the customer name, gender, address. Now we have cleanup to do. So that is one condition that we can use. So let's just come here, let's do that, and then let's just come back here and hit F5. So just to bring back all our data. So another condition we can use is, what if we wanted to know how many cars went over that $1,000 threshold? So now we can come here and say where amount greater than or equal to $1,000. So now we can just say F5, and now we get an opportunity to look at our data and see that we have 10 cards that had purchases that was over $1,000, which is great. And then we can kind of take this and flip it the other way and say, give me 10 cards that had less than 1,000. So now we see that we only had 2 that had less than 1,000, which was only 500 and 800. But we still have that null customer, and we got to figure out how did this customer get missed and where's the information for that customer. So let's just go ahead and come here, F5. One last condition we can try is, just like the store category, we can go into gender. What if we wanted to see how many men made purchases versus how many women made purchases? How do we do that? Let's just say we had where gender like male. By doing that, we hit F5. Now we see how many males made purchases. And if we come here and just change that to female and do this, now we see how many females made purchases. So it's clear that more females made purchases than males. And now you know how to add conditions to your joins. Hey guys, Carr here, and welcome back, man. Today in SQL, we're going to be looking at adding and identifying table short names in SQL. Now for me, when I first started doing SQL and getting my hands on inherited data, this was one of the most interesting things for me in SQL. However, very simple and easy to learn. So let's go ahead and break this down. So in SQL, if we say select all from, let's just say sales, and do an F5 here. That's our sales tables, and it's really not a whole lot to it. However, when you get into databases that have multiple tables, 10, 15, 20, 30 different tables. Now you're like, oh my goodness. You have to join all those tables, or you inherit queries that has these tables joined. You're like, what does this mean? What does that mean? What does this B? What does this C? I'm going to show you guys a very simple way to identify as well as add those table short names. So let's go ahead and join. Let's do a full auto join here. Let's just say join customer on sales dot ID equals customer dot ID. F5. Right now we have the customer in the sales table. So how do you get into the point where you start labeling and identifying those labels in SQL? Well, the way you do that is you come here and you say, instead of sales, you add a S, and instead of customer here, you add a C. And what happens is, as soon as you do that, you see that these get underlined as syntax errors. Now, why are these syntax errors? Because now you have changed the sales name to S and you changed the customer to C. So to get rid of those syntax errors, now you can say S here and you can say C here. And now you have just re-identified what those table names are in SQL. So if we hit F5 here, we see that we get the same results, but now we have re-identified that. So what happens if you want to start building out a SQL statement? We can come here and instead of saying all now, we can say, give me S dot. See? And now it's going to give us, it's identified that table, and now it's going to give us the selections that we can pick from. So let's just say S dot card type or C dot, and now it's identified that customer table, and let's just go with state, and then let's come here and say S dot amount, and then we can come here and say give me the first name, and now you kind of get the gist of where I'm going here. So if we come here and hit F5, now what we've done is we've changed the names of our tables from sales to S and from customer to C. So now whenever we build out the statement and we want to add additional columns to our data set, now what we can do is just simply identify sales as S, and we can identify customer as C. And hey guys, Carr here, and welcome back, man. Today in SQL, we're going to be looking at adding and identifying table short names in SQL. Now, for me, when I first started doing SQL and getting my hands on inherited data, this was one of the most interesting things for me in SQL. However, very simple and easy to learn. So let's go ahead and break this down. So in SQL, if we say select all from, let's just say sales, and do an F5 here. That's our sales tables, and it's really not a whole lot to it. However, when you get into databases that have multiple tables, 10, 15, 20, 30 different tables, now you're like, oh my goodness. You have to join all those tables, or you inherit queries that has these tables joined. You're like, what does this mean? What does that mean? What does this B? What does this C? I'm going to show you guys a very simple way to identify as well as add those table short names. So let's go ahead and join. Let's do a full auto join here. Let's just say join customer on sales dot ID equals customer dot ID. F5. Right now we have the customer in the sales table. So how do you get into the point where you start labeling and identifying those labels in SQL? Well, the way you do that is you come here and you say, instead of sales, you add a S, and instead of customer here, you add a C. And what happens is, as soon as you do that, you see that these get underlined as syntax errors. Now, why are these syntax errors? Because now you have changed the sales name to S and you changed the customer to C. So to get rid of those syntax errors, now you can say S here and you can say C here. And now you have just re-identified what those table names are in SQL. So if we hit F5 here, we see that we get the same results, but now we have re-identified that. So what happens if you want to start building out a SQL statement? We can come here and instead of saying all now, we can say give me S dot. See? And now it's going to give us, it's identified that table, and now it's going to give us the selections that we can pick from. So let's just say S dot card type or C dot, and now it's identified that customer table, and let's just go with state, and then let's come here and say S dot amount, and then we can come here and say give me the first name, and now you kind of get the gist of where I'm going here. So if we come here and hit F5, now what we've done is we've changed the names of our tables from sales to S and from customer to C. So now whenever we build out the statement and we want to add additional columns to our data set, now what we can do is just simply identify sales as S and we can identify customer as C. And that is how you add and identify table short names in SQL. Alright guys, that's a wrap. That concludes SQL for Beginners. I hope you guys enjoyed that tutorial. We'll catch you guys in the next one.